Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are in the world, as is the nature with webinars. Welcome along to this webinar, Portugal's Golden Visa, What to Expect in 2023. Now, it's been another interesting year for the Golden Visa, and speculation has been there for some time about the program's future. So a quick spoiler alert for you, the Golden Visa will still be available in 2023, so stay tuned to find out a little bit more and learn how you can secure a European future for your family in the new year. Now, normally on these sessions, I would be joined by my trusty assistant, but I'm afraid it's just little old me today, so we'll have to make do. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, do please feel free to drop them in the question box that should be provided on your screen. Now, without any further ado, let's dive into today's session. Okay, so what's the agenda for the next 45 minutes or so? We did address some of today's discussion points in our last webinar back in November. So if you were with us last time, do bear with me as we lay the foundations for those who weren't able to attend. We'll get started with the basic background. So introducing myself for those who haven't met me, the company I represent, how we work. We'll then answer some basic questions. Firstly, why? So why get a European passport? Why Portugal is widely considered to be the best route to this? And then how can we get into Portugal? This is where we'll explore a variety of visa options on the table, understand whether the Golden Visa is right for you or whether you should be looking at an alternative visa arrangement. And then finally, what? So what is the Golden Visa? And then, crucially, what is changing in 2023, the main discussion point of today's session, and what do the process and timelines look like? We'll then look at a couple of specific investment options which are exclusive to my team and discuss how to go about selecting the best investment for you and your family. We'll then wrap up with some Q&A. So like I mentioned at the top of the show, if you have any questions, please do use the question box provided and we will come to them at the end. Okay, a quick word on the company, Holborn Assets, to get started. So we are a leading financial planning and investment management firm. We position ourselves as the financial services group of choice and aim to put the right money in the right place at the right time. That is our company motto, but what does that actually mean? Well, essentially, that means working with you to ensure that we can meet all of your international financial goals. So securing a visa, getting you the right return on any investment. And away from golden visas, we also specialize in pensions, financial investments, property investments for clients in the offshore or expatriate market. That is to say, our core market are expats, just like you or just like you might be in the future, considering you're looking at the Portuguese Golden Visa. Now, you might not have heard of Holborn Assets just yet, but we are actually one of the largest financial advisories worldwide, serving over 20,000 clients in more than 100 different countries and managing around $3 billion worth of client assets. We are extremely proud of our 100% success rate on Portuguese Golden Visas. And as of the time of this webinar, we have helped roughly 1,000 people to get residency in Portugal in this way. So when you work with us, you're working with a tried, tested market leader who will work with you to ensure total peace of mind every step of the way. Now, naturally, as a client-centric business, we are regulated in our market of operation. So that includes by the Financial Conduct Authority in the United Kingdom and in the European Union via our European head office, which is in Cyprus. We're multi-award winners, extremely proud of our 4.8 out of 5 rating on Trustpilot, which puts us firmly at the head of the market as regards financial services in the international space. And what about me? What about me? Very, very quickly, I know we're not here to talk about me, but my name is Jonathan. I'm Senior Associate here at Holborn Assets, fully qualified, licensed financial advisor to expats around the world. I've been an expat for around a decade now. However, I qualified back in the UK with a very strong focus on investments, regulated financial planning. I'm also a residency by investment specialist, and I've helped families all over the world to secure their European passports, from Alaska to Beijing, Oxford, Toronto, California, the Philippines, you name it. I've spoken to and helped people in an awful lot of places by now. So if you'd like to contact me at any point and see how we could potentially work together, help you achieve your goals, you can see my email address on the screen there. Not to worry, it will be shown at the end of the presentation as well, so don't worry about taking it down just yet. So that's the dry introduction out of the way. So let's talk about what you're likely here to discuss, and that is moving to Europe. First question then, why should you want a European passport? Well, the value here is the freedom that it gives you. Now, once you have your passport, you can live, retire, work, study, or open a business in any one of the member states in the European Union. It doesn't matter which country gives you the passport, as long as it's an EU passport, you can go where you please. You can also use your new passport, I should say, to travel visa-free to 185 countries around the world. Now let's answer the question, why Portugal specifically? Now this slide shows the most popular Golden Visa programs that are available. There are more, but these are the major ones that we offer as a business. However, there is one program in particular that stands out. This is the go-to for most non-Europeans looking to acquire an EU passport, and this is, of course, Portugal, so no surprises there. Okay, so why is it Portugal? Why would we look to Portugal? Well, two reasons. Number one, it is one of the cheapest programs that exist. So qualifying investments start at just 280,000 euros. In comparison, its neighbor Spain is almost double this at 500,000. And the second reason, the main reason to choose the Golden Visa in Portugal, is the physical stay requirement. So whereas other countries require that you become a tax resident and live there full time, Portugal is a little bit different in that it doesn't. In fact, you only have to visit for an average of 1 week per year to qualify for full Portuguese citizenship and that second EU passport after just 5 years. So if you take the decision to buy a property in Portugal, you can carry on living wherever you are now, and after 5 years, you can obtain EU passports for the whole family. The only other condition on this is that you learn a basic level of Portuguese before getting your new passport to show your ties to Portugal. So what you'll need to do is ask yourself the following question. Do I think that I could spend 1 week per year on average in Portugal for the next 5 years and learn some basic Portuguese along the way? I'm sure, or at least I'm confident, that the answer is yes. Otherwise, I doubt that you'd be on this session with us today. So that's why Portugal. Now let's look at the how. So there are 6 primary visa routes if you'd like to come to Portugal. For today's session, we're going to ignore the working visa. So, that's the glaring omission on this slide. If this concerns you, then you should speak to your prospective employer about this rather than an immigration specialist such as ourselves. Now, you can see the remaining 5 on the screen here. So the Golden Visa is on one side, separated out, and the others are the Startup Visa, which is where you would commit to starting a business and have a business plan approved in Portugal. The Family Reunification Visa, where you're married to a Portuguese resident or you are their dependent. The Passive Income Visa, so the D7 visa, which requires just over 8,000 euros in annual passive income, such as a pension. This must, of course, be paid to you from outside Portugal. And the recently announced Digital Nomad Visa, which requires you to earn more than 33,000 euros per year from a non-Portuguese source. Okay, what is the key distinction here? Why is the Golden Visa separated out into one side of the screen there? The Golden Visa is the only visa that gives you a clear route to citizenship without having to commit to living in Portugal full time. The fees associated with the Golden Visa are higher than the other visa types, so do bear that in mind. And you do need to tie up at least 280,000 euros for at least 5 years. But it is the only visa route that gives you citizenship and allows you to keep your current tax residency. And it's also the only one that gives you the flexibility to leave Portugal to live elsewhere during those 5 years if you decide that Portugal is not quite right for you. And if done right, it can also deliver a very decent profit on the funds that you invest. So, the acid test. Is the Golden Visa for you? Well, if you want to move to Portugal right now, and you can commit to staying there for at least the next 5 years, then the Golden Visa is probably not for you. You may as well look for a cheaper alternative where you don't need to invest any money to qualify. So the D7, the passive income visa, is what most people would choose here. So I would suggest you look at that if you're looking at moving to Portugal straight away and staying there for 5 years. That said, if you can't commit to becoming a Portuguese tax resident, and that means spending at least 6 to 8 months there each year, then the Golden Visa is most likely the one for you. You might even have zero intention of moving to Portugal at all and just want the easiest and cheapest way to get a European passport for your family and all the benefits that that brings. In that case, the Golden Visa is also for you. Now, if you have any questions on your personal situation, it's quite hard to cater to personal situations on a webinar such as this, but if you have any questions or if any of this isn't clear, then do just pop a question in the box on your screen. I see we've had a couple come in already, and we will come to them at the end. Okay, so focusing on the Portuguese Golden Visa scheme in that case. So what are we looking at? It was launched in 2012, so over 10 years old now, and has proven extremely popular as it is the most accessible route to a European passport. You can include the whole family, but you must have a clean criminal record. Now, you'll be interested to know that my team here has managed over 10% of all the Portuguese Golden Visas ever issued. So if you're working with us, you're working with an expert and a market leader, as I mentioned in the About Us section at the very start of this presentation, but it does bear repeating. There are several investment routes to take if you're looking at the Golden Visa. Property is by far the most attractive, so this will be the focus for the remainder of today's session. We will tick off the other routes in just a second. You know what, let's do that now. 5 main investment routes that you could potentially take if you're looking at getting a Golden Visa. The first is transferring at least 1 million euros in cash into a Portuguese bank account. I wouldn't personally recommend it with inflation as high as it is at the minute and the interest rates on offer with a bank. There's an awful lot more we could and should be doing with that, particularly when we're talking about 1 million. So that is usually struck off straight away. Secondly, investing 500,000 into Portuguese funds, so essentially Portuguese businesses. Now, this can be quite volatile, quite risky, with no guarantee of your investment returns. Does of course mean that you can get very attractive returns indeed. In fact, a lot of fund marketing material will promise attractive returns, but the flip side of that is a greater degree of risk. When we invest, capital can go down as well as up in a fund-based investment. So be careful with that. Real estate, however, starts at the 280,000 mark, and this is by far the most flexible and popular route. So we will focus on this, as I just mentioned. There are also routes to the visa via a cultural donation of €250,000, so 250,000 euros. Now, I say donation because investing in the arts almost never guarantees a return. So for all intents and purposes, it is a donation. Or finally, you can create at least 8 jobs in Portugal. That's actually 10 jobs across most of the country, or 8 in a low density area, low population density area, just to clarify. So why is real estate the most attractive then? Well, simply because it offers a lot more flexibility than the other routes that I've just mentioned. So with the right partner, with the right investment, you can have yields paid to you upfront, a relatively low investment amount, a place to stay for free when you need to come to Portugal to fulfill the onward residency requirement, and a built-in exit strategy via a guaranteed buyback once your passports have been obtained. So if you're looking for stability, if you're looking for control, real estate offers a very, very attractive and compelling route to the Golden Visa. So diving a little deeper into real estate then, so let's look at the 2022 rules, and then after this slide, we'll begin looking at 2023. Now, you may be aware that since the start of 2022, there have been restrictions on where we can invest for a Golden Visa. Now, the orange areas on this map are the most desirable areas of Portugal. So that's Lisbon, Porto, most of the Algarve. And as of this year, as of 2022, residential real estate in these areas no longer qualifies for a Golden Visa. The other areas of Portugal are just nowhere near as attractive for investors, so it no longer makes sense for my team, for myself, to offer options in the residential real estate space. So looking at it this way, if you're buying a place to live, then you're probably looking at a D7 visa rather than the Golden Visa. But if you're buying an investment, it doesn't make much sense to look in these grey zones. So this could therefore be a little bit of a problem. However, commercial real estate in these orange areas still qualifies. Now, this could be shops, offices, or hotels. Apartment hotels are the closest thing to residential real estate that still qualify in this space. And they can make for some really attractive investment cases if done right. So this is now our primary focus, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a second. Now, the threshold for qualifying investments, I mentioned it starts at 280,000 euros. This actually varies slightly depending on region and property type. So as you can see, there are 4 types of qualifying property. So new builds in low density areas, such as most of the Algarve, refurbishments, and refurbishments in low density areas. Now, we at Holborn Assets, we specialize in finding the best investments across all of these categories, and we have exclusive options at each of these 4 levels. As a general rule, however, the more you are able to invest, the greater the return on the investment. This is simply because there is an awful lot of demand at the 280,000 euro entry point, and a very, very low supply due to the demands or the qualifying conditions that are placed on the property in order for it to qualify. So the yields on offer for this entry point are quite low. If you can invest a little bit more, you'll typically be rewarded for that. So I'd urge you to keep a bit of an open mind when selecting the right investment for you. Don't fixate on getting as close to the 280,000 entry point as possible. If you do that, you might actually be missing a trick. Many people actually do make this mistake. Many people that I speak to tell me, Jonathan, how can we get as close to the 280k minimum as possible? If you do that, you might miss out on far more profitable investments if you just invest a few thousand more. So we'll run through some examples of good investments in just a few minutes. Before we do that, let's look at this. So I can almost hear you speaking through the screen at me. It's all very well and good talking about the rules for 2022, but that's not why we're here. What about 2023? So I know you're all in this session to learn about what to expect with the Golden Visa this year, next year, I should add. So let's address that now. So one of the main reasons that we decided to organize this webinar today was this man on your screen here. Now that's Antonio Costa, Prime Minister of Portugal, for those of you who don't recognize him. And essentially last month, he did spook global investors somewhat when he gave a bit of a bombshell interview to reporters, saying that he wanted to scrap the Golden Visa scheme because it had already fulfilled its function. Now, this caused a little bit of panic, to say the least. It's definitely caused my inbox to get a little bit busier than usual, but to be honest, it wasn't entirely unexpected. With the Golden Visa historically being quite popular with Russians, for example, who are, of course, now blacklisted after their invasion of Ukraine, and schemes of this ilk generally being frowned upon by policymakers in Brussels, the European Union has been pressuring Portugal for years to end the program. And for a very short time, it looked like they might have finally been granted their wish. But then, just 3 weeks after that interview, Costa's ideas were put to the Portuguese Parliament, and they summarily rejected them. So as a result, the Golden Visa remains alive and well for the time being. That bombshell interview turned out to be a complete non-story. So for 2023 at least, you can still apply to the Golden Visa and get on Europe's easiest route to a second citizenship. That said, this subject will likely be revisited in a year's time. So at the time of this webinar, we believe that this is likely to be the final year for Portugal's Golden Visa, and that the program will be closed to new applicants from 2024. This is yet to be confirmed and is of course subject to change, but this certainly appears to be the direction of travel. So if you're looking at this, if you're thinking about getting onto the Portuguese Golden Visa program and giving your family the option of a European future, the best advice is to get started ASAP. To recap and clarify then, in 2023, there should be a continuation of the 2022 Golden Visa rules. We do not expect this to change for the foreseeable future. Bearing that in mind, applicants should target pre-approval with the CEF that's the Portuguese immigration authorities, before any rules potentially change in the future. If the sun does set on the Golden Visa, and we do believe that it will, you want to be in the system by the time that happens. Because it typically takes a few months to reach pre-approval stage, I personally would strongly recommend making a start as early as possible in 2023 to avoid any potential problems and to make sure that your Golden Visa is secured. That said, we do expect there to be some kind of grace period before any new rules could potentially come into effect. This was the case when the rules on qualifying property changed at the start of 2022, when we were given several months worth of lead-in time to prepare for that. We would anticipate the same concessions again from the government, given just how many local businesses would be affected by such change. So that's likely to come down the pipe at some point in 2023. Even so, there are two key pointers that I would ask you to consider. One, rules do change. When this happens, they can change quickly, regardless of any grace period. So make sure that any partner you work with is happy to take on that regulatory risk for you. Now, we put refund clauses into our client agreements that aim to protect our clients if something goes wrong or if something changes, and that's there to give them invaluable peace of mind. We believe in protecting our investors, and we back that up in writing. That's something that you might not get if you were to look elsewhere. And two, I've said this a few times now, but it bears repeating one final time, the Golden Visa will not be available forever. So if you're thinking about this, if you've been thinking about this for a while, it's now time to get off the fence and do something about it. You might not get that chance again. Heavy stuff, but the continuation of the Golden Visa program is very good news for many, and I would imagine a lot of people on this webinar today. So now let's take a little bit of a step back and look at the process to obtain your Golden Visa. Now, this slide has been simplified a little bit to make it quite easy to understand, but we don't need to go into any more detail at this stage. We can do that in a personal meeting after this webinar. But grosso modo, this is the process for you to obtain your Golden Visa residence permit. Now, at the time of this webinar, the whole thing takes around 12 months. And as you can see, we do most of this from the comfort of your home. Now, this includes the kickoff, which is where we sign client agreements. We establish your administrative presence in Portugal. That means getting your tax numbers, opening your bank account, setting up a power of attorney so that our lawyers, your lawyers, can purchase the property for you. We'll then ask you to send the funds to your Portuguese bank account to complete the property purchase. And once that is done, we will submit your Golden Visa application to the authorities for approval. This is a key milestone because once your application has been given pre-approval, you are in the system. Once that's been achieved, it's just a matter of time before we have everything sorted and we get your cards printed and issued. To do this, we'll need to invite you to come over to Portugal for a biometric appointment. This is the first and only time in the entire process that we actually need you to be physically present in Portugal. And then once that's done, we will take care of the rest. And then once the cards have been printed, issued, we'll have them sent out to your home address, wherever that is in the world. And then, congratulations, you are now a bona fide resident of Portugal, and the clock can begin ticking on that 5-year period. After those 5 years, you'll then be eligible for dual nationality and that second passport, subject to you passing that basic language test. Okay, so what does the pathway to citizenship look like once we've actually got our cards? Well, like I say, it's a 5-year process. Golden visas, when they are approved, they're issued and valid for a 2-year period. So every 2 years, we do need to renew them. So 2 years after the cards are issued, we will need you to come back to Portugal for a renewal process, and then the Golden Visa will be renewed again for another 2-year period, provided that you're still holding the investment, which should be a given if we're going into this with our eyes open and saying this is a 5-year plus timeline. After that's renewed for 2 years, that is again valid for another 2 years, and then we'll do the same thing in 2 years' time again. We'll come back for another 2 years, renew it once again, and then 1 year after that, that will be completion of the 5-year period, and then we should be in a position to apply for your citizenship. And there we go. Once you've applied for citizenship, a fairly straightforward process, and we obtain your EU passports. Okay, a couple of case studies now, just to put a little bit of meat on the bones for you. So firstly, I want us to look at one client family of mine, and this is Mr. and Mrs. C. These are clients based in China. She is Chinese, he is Indian, and they essentially came to me because they needed a plan B to give their daughter a brighter future outside of China. They wanted to give her access to European education and plan to move to Portugal when their work allows. However, the husband is a powerful CEO, deep political connections, and a lot of international business commitments. So leaving China is just not an option for the next several years. And the wife, she has a very, very similar problem. Again, a very powerful businesswoman, isn't ready to give up her line of work just yet. So we formulated a plan together. We invested in the Portuguese Golden Visa so that they can provide that flexibility to their daughter for her future, and also give themselves the right to come and live in Portugal. I'm actually looking in the north of Portugal to be specific, when they're finally ready to commit to moving over. Not decided yet. They may even base themselves in Spain, but that's something that we will discuss. We actually gave them an investment that delivered a very, very interesting level of profit as well on that original investment, and they are very, very happy with that arrangement indeed. Okay, case study number 2. So Mr. and Mrs. G. Now this is a couple, a very young family from Oxfordshire in the UK. Now Mr. and Mrs. G, they came to me at a bit of a dark time. They weren't very happy, to say the least, at the UK's decision to pursue Brexit and leave the European Union, which had actually wrecked their dream of moving to France and raising their newborn baby girl there. So of course the UK had freedom of movement and gave its citizens the right to come and settle anywhere across the European Union before pursuing Brexit. And after that, the UK treated as a third country like anyone else outside the European Union. So we set about fixing that for them. Fortunately, Mr. and Mrs. G, they love to travel, so we pursued a golden visa, and that has allowed them to split their time between Portugal and other states in the Mediterranean. So they're currently living on a boat, going where the tides take them. Their investment option also paid them a return of 25% upfront, so they're very, very happy with the solution that we found together. They haven't yet got their passport, still a couple of years left to run on that, but they'll be heading straight to France as soon as they do. Now, remember, the Golden Visa also gives you the unlimited right to travel through Europe while you are waiting for your passport. So if you'd like to see the continent while you wait for your citizenship to come through, this is now very easy to do. Okay, that's the Golden Visa, the background. What's changing for next year, or rather not? Let's look at some investment options in that case. So what I'm about to present to you are, in my opinion, the leading options in Portugal currently. And we're going to focus on 2 specific use cases, which in my opinion should cover 99% of the investors looking at the Golden Visa. Now that's number 1, the highest yield in the market for those wanting maximum return on investment. And number 2, the best case available at the 280,000 minimum entry point. Getting started then with the highest yielding investment available on the market. Now this is the Royal Óbidos Spa and Golf Resort. This pays a whopping 35% gross upfront yield and comes with some very attractive conditions indeed. Now, this is actually my personal favorite, and this is where I would put my own money if I were looking at the Golden Visa myself. So one to bear in mind. But who is this for? This is for the investor looking for the best available investment, full stop. It is more expensive than many of the other options available, simply because it's pitched at that 500,000 euro mark, but the investor is very generously compensated for that additional outlay. It is also a 5-star golf and spa hotel, which is particularly nice to have if you choose to come and stay there yourself. The location is very attractive as well. It's just outside the historic town of Óbidos, a 45-minute drive to the north of Lisbon, right on the Silver Coast. It's nestled in between a couple of other 5-star resorts, just a few short minutes from the Óbidos Lagoon and the renowned surfing spot of Nazaré as well, and nestled in amongst some of Portugal's leading golf courses. The hotel itself, what are we talking about? Built in 2021, fully completed, fully operational. It is rated 8.7 out of 10 on booking.com with over 1,700 reviews as of December 2022. These apartments that we are talking about are new build, so this means that this property qualifies for the Golden Visa at the 500,000 euro mark. However, my clients can invest in this property from as little as 369,000 euros, and I'll explain how in just a second. What you're doing with this investment is you're investing in a full title deed, your own apartment, not fractional shares in a building or a business. Now, this means that you have far greater control in the future over your investment, and you don't have to deal with any other shareholders when you are looking to exit, for example. It also protects you, and this is crucial, it protects you if anything happens to the hotel operator, as you would still own a very attractive piece of real estate that could easily be resold at any point in the future that would be 100% in your name. Now, one-bedroom apartments at Royal Óbidos have a stunning panoramic sea view, and they're all finished in keeping with the five-star luxury hotel. The golf course surrounding the complex is actually a PGA golf course designed by the late great Severiano Ballesteros, and is actually one of Europe's leading golf courses, great repute. And just to make it even sweeter, the owner can actually stay in their unit in Royal Óbidos for up to 6 weeks per year. That's well above what is usually available to a private Golden Visa investor. It's a really beautiful development as well, so I do wish I could walk you through the place instead of just showing you a couple of pictures on the screen here. But there you go, such is the limitation of technology. Maybe that will change in the coming years. Now, on to the most important part, the financials. Yes, this is more expensive than the 280,000 minimum amount, and perhaps not everyone can reach this level, but my clients receive a huge 7% gross rental yield on this property per year, which is paid to you up front for 5 years before you even complete the purchase. What does this actually mean in practice? Well, essentially, what that means is you need to invest 368,750 euros plus the purchase taxes in order to buy the property. After 5 years, the developer will then buy you back for 500,000 euros. So 368,750 in, but 500,000 out once you have your passports. Assuming you take the buyback, which is entirely up to you, and you have 4 years in which to decide this. You don't need to decide right away if you're going to enforce the buyback or not. Now, the Royal Óbidos. This is the most profitable Golden Visa investment available anywhere in Portugal at the time of this webinar. Full stop. So, if you want to get Portuguese passports and make a healthy profit at the same time, then this is likely to be the project that you should be looking at. It's also extremely well managed from a risk management point of view, because the buildings are 100% finished, so that means no construction risk. All cash flows except the buyback are paid to you up front, so again, reducing your counterparty risk, and you have the peace of mind that's given to you by the full title deed rather than fractional shares. So this is an exceptional offer, outstanding in the current market. It really is. So if you can extend to this level, then I would strongly urge you to consider it. A couple of photos now just to show you the finish on the property. We won't dwell on it too much as this is not necessarily the point of the webinar, but as you can see, we're talking about standalone buildings here, beautifully finished to 5-star luxury standard, of course. A couple of photos of the inside of the units. Like this, that's the terrace, and of course panoramic sea views in each one. So not much more to say about that really, just to highlight the rating on booking.com. You can research this property. If this is something that's interesting to you, do take a look on the page on booking.com yourself, read the reviews, understand how people that stay there feel about the resort, and get a feel for what we're actually talking about. I'm sure you'll I'm sure this will back up what I'm saying, what I'm showing you, and that this is an exceptional offer for the Golden Visa. Okay, that is the outstanding option for the investor looking for the best return in the market. However, there will be some people on this webinar that are looking for the best option at or near the 280,000 minimum. And that's what we're going to look at with the Yellow Tulip Apartment Hotel. Now, this is the best investment case that I've seen at the 280,000 minimum entry point. This offers a much lower yield than the Royal Abydos, but it is still interesting. Now, this slide, this should actually say 20k plus yield. It depends on the unit you choose, but most units here will offer a 21 to 22,000 yield and a 50% profit share after the first 5 years, which we'll go into now. Firstly, though, who is this for? If you are trying to keep a strict purchase budget of the absolute minimum for Portuguese Golden Visa of 280,000, this is probably the one for you. It means that you would need to tie up less capital, although this does mean, as I've just mentioned, a lower yield than the Abydos. In terms of location, very good. Nestled in between Lagos and Portimao on the Algarve. And these are the key facts about this particular property. It's another completed building, so again, no construction risk. But it is a refurbishment project, and that's necessary in order to qualify at the 280,000 euro minimum threshold. Again, you are buying a full title deed, but this time to 2 studio apartments, each of 25 square meters each. So not 1 apartment, but 2. This hotel is a 4-star resort in the Algarve, as we've just seen, and it's rated 6.8 out of 10 on booking.com. So a little bit lower than the Royal Abydos, but truth be told, most of the negative feedback refers to the need to refurbish the building. So do check out the booking.com listing, read those for yourself. And of course, renovations are being done as part of this process, and this is why this is such an interesting opportunity. You can also stay here for free for up to 2 weeks per year, which is more than enough to meet the onward residency requirement for the Golden Visa. And back onto the most important part of this particular investment, that's the financials. So as this is a refurbishment project, the first 2 years do not offer a rental yield. However, the developer will pay the equivalent of a 3.3% yield upfront for years 3, 4, and 5. That's a total of 20,000 euros net. And that is if we consider the 280,000 euro. There are several options in the Yellow Tulip which range from 280,000 up to 295,000 euro. The buyback with this property, it's actually the same buyback conditions as the Abydos. This is actually with the same developer called Excellium Capital. They are our preferred partner for Golden Visa projects for a number of reasons. If you'd like to know more about that relationship, do let me know in the question box provided, and I can explain in a little bit more detail. That is essentially done from a risk management perspective to make sure that we look after our investments and apply the correct level of due diligence on all our partners. Now, the buyback, of course, is set at the same level as the purchase price. So if you purchase units at the Yellow Tulip for 280k, then it's 280k the buyback value after the 5 years in year 6. If you purchase at 295, for example, then the buyback is set at 295. Now, if you choose not to enforce the buyback, you can enter into a profit sharing agreement with the hotel operator for future years. This is set, as we saw on the title slide, at 50% of hotel profits, which makes this a very interesting investment if you're holding this for the longer term. Again, no construction risk, front-loaded cash flows, and that makes this an outstanding investment case. This is a great option if you're looking to tie up the lowest possible amount of capital and yet still have a compelling, well-managed, certainly from a risk management perspective, investment that qualifies you for the Golden Visa. So a few properties, a few photos again to show you the property. So this is a rendering of what the hotel is going to look like post renovation. So large spaces, lovely communal facilities. A little bit different, of course, to the Royal Abydos. This is centered a little bit more towards families, with it being a 4-star resort than a 5-star resort, which is more towards adults. This is what the units will look like when they're finished. As I say, 25 square meters per studio times 2 studios. And this is the page on booking.com, so you can see what it looks like currently. Of course, I can provide the renders, so you can see what this will look like post renovation, but everything is still very functional and very operational, as you'd expect from an operating hotel. Alternatives. So like I say, those 2 options are probably enough to cover 99% of the investors or the potential investors that are on this webinar or looking for a Golden Visa in the future. But we do work with a high number, far more than I could possibly show you in this webinar. But let me just show you a couple of other alternatives just to give you a flavor of what else is available in the market. So, like I say, the two that we've already discussed are the standout options in my opinion. This is just to give further context. Number one, the Faro Riverside. Now, this is a refurbishment project in an attractive central location in Faro in the Algarve. Again, at the 280,000 minimum entry point. So, one to consider if you're looking to tie up the strict minimum capital. As per many projects in the Golden Visa, certainly at this type of investment, the developer will pay all property taxes. So what we're talking about here are fractional shares rather than a full title deed, and the buyback is mandatory rather than optional, and there are no options here for profit sharing. So you can see why I personally tend to recommend the Yellow Tulip if you're looking at the 280,000 euro level. However, this is a good second option at this price, and like I say, we do get a lot of interest in the Faro Riverside. Next is the Lisbon Skyview. This is the next band up. So this is the same developer actually as the Faro Riverside. It's another refurbishment project, but at the slightly higher 350,000 euro mark, and that's due to its location in Lisbon. Now, to compensate you for this slightly higher price, the developer will pay you a 3% annual yield after the hotel is completed. Again, you are investing in fractional shares in the building and not a full title deed to an apartment, and the buyback is mandatory, not optional, so a little bit less freedom and flexibility and control of your investment. And then finally, the TNAP apartments in Porto. Now, this is a little bit different. This is just to give you a little bit of a different angle. These are city centre apartments that offer a guaranteed 3.5% gross annual yield. That's really not bad considering the 350,000 euro asking price. Doesn't compare to the 7% with Obidos, but in the context of the wider market, really isn't that bad. However, there is no buyback on this deal, so you'd need to take on the risk and, let's be honest, inconvenience of selling it yourself once you have your passports. So if you have this budget available, or rather, if I had this budget available, I'd probably prefer to look at the Royal Obidos instead, but this might appeal to a certain type of investor. And that's pretty much it. So I've seen that we've got quite a few questions that have come in on the chat box there. So I'm going to open them up and come to them in a second. And again, apologies that it's just me. It's usually a lot more fun when we have a few more faces on this webinar. So I hope I haven't bored you to tears with this. But if you would like to pick this up and have a personal meeting, then I'd be more than happy to do that. Whether that's this side of Christmas or the other side of Christmas, that's entirely up to you. But if you'd like us to book in some time, just drop me a line. My email address is jonathan.ralph@holbornassets.com, and I'll be more than happy to explore what you're looking to achieve and find the right outcome and the right solution for you. So without further ado, let's dive into these questions. Let's see what people have been asking. Bear with me as I just give these a read, and then I'll read them out. So I hope that these are all relevant. Number one, do you have a digital nomad visa webinar scheduled? Don't have one scheduled. We might look at this at some point in the future. However, this is a very, very different use case to the Golden Visa. Of course, the digital nomad visa requires you to move to Portugal straight away, take up tax residency in Portugal. So that is a very, very different use case to what we're talking about with the Golden Visa. And given the rule changes and given the ongoing uncertainty with the Golden Visa, we felt it necessary to have this webinar just to clarify what we're looking at for the new year. As of right now, we don't have a digital nomad one scheduled, but we may look at it. So watch this space. Next question. How long on average is the waiting period from the time the GV is submitted to CEF until you get residency cards? Also, why does it seem like the D7 gets approved so much quicker? Now, the D7 has a very, very different process to the Golden Visa. The Golden Visa, of course, we're dealing with foreign investors who are not necessarily present in Portugal, so this can take a little bit longer, simply due to pressure and availability. The D7 has a lot more volume going through it as well, so when you get the public sector workers that are handling this, they tend to be able to breeze through them a little bit quicker than the Golden Visa, which can be a little bit more complicated. That's also why the Golden Visa is a little bit more expensive than the D7. And then just to answer your question, how long on average is the waiting period from the time the GV is submitted to CEF until we get the residency cards? Now, the full process end to end should take around 12 months at the minute. Normal operating standards before this year were actually between 6 to 8 months. That's since been extended out to 10 to 12. It takes us around 3 months to get pre-approval with the CEF, and then a further 6 to 9 to get the residency cards out. That is, of course, just a guideline, and that is subject to change. We are finding that timelines are starting to accelerate now, which is very, very promising. Okay, anonymous question. Thank you for your question, anonymous. If you tour other Schengen countries within the 5-year required period, does that invalidate your 5 years? No, it does not. So with the residence permit in Portugal, the Golden Visa residence permit, you have the right to live in Portugal with no conditions other than you maintain the underlying investment. And you have the right to travel through the Schengen area on that residency card. You're subject to the 9180-day rule on that, but touring through the Schengen period, as long as you don't overstay that 180-day rule, then you're absolutely fine with that, not an issue. Okay, Gideon, thank you for the question. I have 2 sons. One is now 18. Is he too old to benefit from this visa? The answer, Gideon, not at all. Not at all. So dependent children can be added on to the application. Up to the age of 21, this is very straightforward. Above the age of 21, we have to prove dependency. There are certain ways that we can do that. I would suggest that we get on a personal call to go through your situation with your sons and understand what we'd be looking at. But no, if one of your sons is 18, that is not too old to get onto this visa. So yeah, no problem at all. Okay, next question. Elena, thank you for the question. I understand that the webinar is mostly targeted at UK citizens. It's not actually. This is. I apologize if I've given you that impression. However, do you have any insights if the Golden Visa program will ever be unfrozen for Russian citizens, especially for those who submitted their documents in 2021 before the war started? Thank you. Elena, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, and I know this is a very, very difficult situation for a lot of Russians who wanted to look at this and through essentially no fault of their own in most cases find themselves on a blacklist. Unfortunately, I don't have any visibility on what is going to happen with Russian applicants at the minute. A lot of that will likely depend on the resolution of the Ukraine conflict. I wish we had greater visibility on that. And I wish we could be of greater help, but unfortunately this is a waiting game, and geopolitics on this one are a little bit bigger than ourselves. So that one, I'm afraid, is a wait and see. I wish the answer was a little bit better for you. Okay. Will this webinar be available to view offline? I need to leave. I guess you're no longer here, Wendy. So thank you for the question. Yes, everyone that registered for this webinar will be given a link to a recording of this. So no worries. Okay, anonymous, another anonymous. We love the questions from anonymous, a very prolific question asker. After passing the 5 years as a Golden Visa holder, is there any minimum stay requirement in Portugal apart from the language test to become qualified to get the Portuguese passport? What you need are 5 years of legal residency in Portugal in order to qualify for the citizenship. So I would advise applying for the citizenship as soon as possible after you complete that 5 years. So at any point in those 5 years, you can complete the language test. So you can do that right now if you want. The language test is an A2 level, which is a little bit, it's essentially the next step from total beginner. It's not a significant hurdle for many unless you really do struggle with languages. It's not been a problem for any of our clients in the past. And then after that, I would suggest that you get on to a citizenship application straight away. But there are no concrete minimum stay requirements beyond that, as long as you comply with the 5 years of legal residency, which for the Golden Visa is 1 week per year on average, and then you can get that application in. Okay, question from Jason. Thank you for your question, Jason. Do I need to buy one or two apartments at Royal Obidos to qualify for the visa? Now, might I suggest that this could be you and your wife, or you and someone else? No, that's not the case. So with Royal Obidos, if this is the one that you like, this would be one apartment per family, per applicant, per application. So if it's you, your wife, your kids, maybe your parents, this would just be the one property for all of you, and we would add on the additional applicants as dependents to your application. So just the one apartment necessary. Okay, Memphis. Thank you for the question, Memphis. Please explain the EU health card with this. Now, when you become a legal resident of the European Union, you can have access to healthcare. Now, you need to become a tax resident in a country to qualify for healthcare. So what this essentially means is if you are not living in Portugal, then I would suggest taking out private health insurance if you are looking at coming to Portugal for an extended period, but not becoming tax resident, i.e. not moving there. If you decide to move into Portugal on a golden visa or on D7 or whatever, then you would be eligible for Portuguese healthcare. So that's totally fine. And then after you've actually achieved your passport, which is the goal for most people, you have the right to go anywhere across the European Union and access healthcare in those member states, which is a very, very interesting benefit for a lot of people, particularly American applicants. Oh, another question from Anonymous, and Anonymous very active again. Is a vehicle accident considered as a criminal record? That really depends on the nature of the vehicle accident. So I would suggest that you and I book in a private session one-to-one to go through that. Essentially, if this is deemed a criminal offence in Portugal that would result in jail time, then that would be a red flag and a no. If it's not the case, then let's look at it and let's see if you'd still be eligible or not. It really depends on the severity of the infraction. Most vehicle accidents would not be considered a criminal record if it's a simple sort of fender bender, and it's not causing serious, or if it's not causing death or serious injury or any other major issue, then you should be fine. But do get in touch and we can look at it. Okay, Katie, very interesting question. Thank you for this. How does it work for an unmarried couple? Do they need to each invest independently? That really depends, Katie. Now, if you're talking about yourself and your partner, if you can prove that you have a relationship and you've been together for at least 2 years, and you can document that. So let's say you live together and you both have utility statements, bank statements coming to the same address, then we can use that as a proof of relationship. And as long as we can prove that for the 2-year period, then you can get on the same application and you do not need to invest independently. So, as long as you can do that 2 years, then we should be fine. As always, with personal situations like that, I do recommend you get in touch. Let's have a quick chat and let's just go through that together. And there are a few bits and pieces that I can explain to you and show you just to make sure that everything is totally above board. And we would run all checks anyway before we got started with any type of investment as part of our onboarding process. I hope that answers your question. Right, and that is all the questions that we have had coming in. So last chance, if anything pops into your head, now is the time. I will give you about 10 seconds, but if not, if anything comes to mind after we close this session today, do just drop me a line. Like I say, jonathan.ralph@holbornassets.com. More than happy to come back to you. We will likely be taking a couple of days holiday over the Christmas break. So that means Christmas Day, Boxing Day, New Year's Day. But apart from that, we are going to be across it and available for meetings, for clarifications, and of course, supporting our existing clients. So please feel free to reach out if there's anything we can do to help you or guide you on this journey. I hope you've enjoyed this webinar today. I hope it's been useful, and I look forward to meeting some or maybe even all of you at some point in the future. So thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day. Take care, and Merry Christmas. See you later.